It saved Harley, or so we were told. But behind the Evolution engine was a dark compromise that changed everything. If you ride or ever dreamed of it, you need to see this. Watch till the end, because the riders who figured it out, they've already connected the dots. The savior with a secret. This engine didn't save Harley-Davidson, it shackled it. In the early 1980s, Harley-Davidson was on life support. The company had just escaped the AMF era, an era marked by mechanical failures, poor quality control, and dwindling public trust. With Japanese bikes dominating the streets with faster, smoother, and more reliable machines, Harley needed more than just a rebrand. It needed a miracle. That miracle arrived in the form of the Evolution engine, lovingly called the Evo. When it debuted in 1984, the Evo was marketed as the rebirth of Harley's soul. The company used the Evo to tell a redemption story. After years of decline, Harley was back. Riders responded. The Evo became the mechanical messiah. It powered everything from the soft rumble of the heritage Softail to the brawny fat boy that would cement its pop culture dominance in movies like Terminator 2. The Evo wasn't just an engine, it was a statement, and to many it proved Harley could evolve without losing its DNA. But under the chrome-plated story of triumph, something darker was already humming. Because while the Evo may have saved the brand's image, it quietly compromised its soul. That chrome legacy Harley wrapped around the Evo, it was starting to crack from the inside out. The internal fracture. What they didn't tell you? Evo engines crash internally without warning. By the early 1990s, stories began surfacing. Whispers on shop floors, late-night garage forums, frustrated conversations at roadside bars. Riders who had invested their faith in the Evo were blowing engines far earlier than expected. Some described hairline cracks appearing in crankcases. Others reported warped head decks that refused to seal. These weren't careless riders abusing their bikes. They were seasoned Harley loyalists, maintaining their machines the way old-school gearheads always had. But no matter the loyalty, the problems kept spreading. And worst of all, they weren't easy to detect until it was too late. The irony? The very things that made the Evo feel like progress, aluminum cases, tighter tolerances, less vibration, also made it less forgiving. When flaws occurred, they weren't slow and obvious. They were sudden, catastrophic, and expensive. Harley never issued mass recalls, and they rarely acknowledged the pattern. Instead, the burden fell on the owners and mechanics who found themselves rebuilding bulletproof engines before 50,000 miles. And still, the myth held. Harley enthusiasts doubled down, calling it a rider's engine that just needed the right touch. But the truth was out. The Evo didn't eliminate unreliability. It just changed how it failed and made sure you didn't see it coming. Harley could have admitted the truth, but instead they chose to rewrite the rules of the game. If you've ever owned a Harley or been burned by one, hit that like button so more riders find this before they make a mistake. And drop a comment below. Was the Evolution engine Harley's greatest move or its biggest lie? Your voice is part of this story and we're reading every single one. Regulation over revolution. Evo wasn't retired. It was removed by force. By the late 1990s, environmental regulation had fully arrived on the motorcycle manufacturing floor. Agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency and the California Air Resources Board weren't just suggestions anymore. They were mandates. Noise levels had to drop. Emissions had to be slashed. Any engine that didn't comply risked dragging its maker into legal and financial hell. And the Evo? It had hit its limit. While beloved by purists, the Evo simply couldn't be retrofitted endlessly to meet the new rules. To Harley's engineers, it was a ticking compliance bomb, and instead of redesigning it, they chose to kill it. The decision wasn't mechanical, it was political. Harley, once seen as a symbol of American defiance, quietly folded to regulatory pressure. They didn't scream about overreach. They didn't protest the change. They simply prepared the next chapter. The twin-cam engine. Internally, Harley knew this shift would alienate longtime riders, but executives believed they had no choice. The Evo had run its course, not because it failed the road, but because it failed the rulebook. To survive as a modern corporation, Harley had to bury the very engine that saved it. And with one calculated move, the company didn't just retire a legend, they erased it. While Harley was cutting corners, real riders were gearing up right. In the description below, we've linked battle-tested gloves, jackets, and gear we trust. No fluff, just what works. Grab what you need and keep riding prepared. The reset no one asked for. Harley told us Evo was perfect. Then they tore it down completely. In 1999, the Twin Cam 88 arrived. It was supposed to be Harley's next great chapter. Smoother, stronger, and quieter. A technical evolution. But to many loyalists, it felt like a betrayal. The Evo had earned its place through real-world grit. The Twin Cam? It felt engineered by the committee. Its new vibration-canceling gear didn't roar. It purred. It swapped tradition for compliance. And behind closed doors, riders whispered about heat issues, complex internals, and a creeping sense that this engine wasn't built for freedom. It was built for lawyers. Harley framed the shift as innovation. They touted reduced emissions, increased displacement, and better efficiency. But few missed the truth. Harley didn't trust the Evo to carry them forward. Rather than improving it, they abandoned it. And riders noticed. The feel was different. The maintenance was harder. Where Evo represented a spiritual continuity with Harley's raw, rebellious past, the Twin Cam felt like a product made to pass inspection, not ignite passion. For many, this marked the moment the soul of the brand began to slip through its fingers. And what came next would show just how unstable that grip had become. The plastic time bomb. Twin Cam promised strength, but delivered plastic shards. When Harley-Davidson introduced the Twin Cam 88 in 1999, the company promoted it as the natural heir to the Evolution engine, a next-generation leap that would restore power and refine reliability. Riders expected more muscle and better engineering. What they got was a cleverly concealed mechanical flaw that would come to define the entire platform. At the center of it were plastic cam chain tensioners, seemingly minor components that turned into catastrophic liabilities. These parts, responsible for maintaining proper timing in the engine, were made of inexpensive composite material that degraded rapidly under heat and friction. Unlike the Evo, which failed in ways that could often be diagnosed early, twin cam failures struck without warning. As the tensioners wore down, plastic particles began circulating through the oil system. What followed was a mechanical cascade, oil starvation, valve train failure, and in the worst cases, complete engine destruction. Harley never issued a formal recall. They quietly redesigned the tensioners in later models, but early adopters were left holding the bag, footing multi-thousand-dollar repair bills on motorcycles that were supposed to be premium machines. The irony was brutal. Harley replaced the Evo to chase reliability and introduced a flaw that was both avoidable and unforgivable. Behind the curtain, engineers weren't simplifying, they were scrambling to bury the mess with more machinery, when overengineering became a defense mechanism. Harley's fix: more gear, more complexity, and more hidden risk. After waves of complaints about cam tensioner failures, Harley responded, not with a return to simplicity, but with layers of engineering designed to mask the issue rather than eliminate it. The Twin Cam 88B, launched for Softail models, featured internal balance shafts to reduce vibration. It was a bold move aimed at satisfying riders who missed the feel of Evo's raw mechanical presence. But those shafts came with their own set of problems: more moving parts, more weight, and more friction. The engine became heavier, hotter, and harder to service. In trying to smooth out the ride, Harley added complexity that led to even more points of failure. The strategy didn't stop there. Instead of solving the tensioner problem at its root by switching to gear drive systems across the board, they implemented temporary workarounds. Meanwhile, independent shops offered their own solutions: conversion kits, upgraded components, and aftermarket fixes. But these weren't cheap, and many riders resented the fact that reliability had become a do-it-yourself burden. The Twin Cam began to feel like a machine designed by engineers responding to lawsuits, not riders. Each new fix added layers, but no clarity. The deeper Harley dug into design fixes, the hotter the consequences became. The 103 engine heat crisis. The 103 runs so hot it burns riders and torches trust. When Harley expanded the twin-cam platform into the 103 cubic inch configuration, it was supposed to be a performance upgrade. More power, more torque, a bolder engine for riders who wanted dominance on the road. But behind that horsepower bump was a deeper issue: excessive heat. Riders began reporting scalding air coming off the engine, scorched thighs, and oil temperatures climbing into the danger zone. The 103 was running too hot, and Harley knew it. They quietly recommended synthetic oil to some customers and later added external oil coolers to select models. But the root cause, tight tolerances, heavier internal mass, and inadequate thermal management, remained unresolved. To make matters worse, crankshaft misalignment became a recurring complaint. Tolerance stacking in the manufacturing process led to imbalance at high RPMs, increasing vibration, and contributing to premature bearing wear. Riders felt it in their hands and knees. Mechanics saw it in their teardown reports. And Harley issued silence. Once again, it was the community that had to step in. Independent techs documented failures, forums exploded with how-to guides, and thermal wrap kits flew off the shelves. But the damage was deeper than mechanics. Harley had violated the trust riders placed in the brand's core promise: freedom, reliability, and respect. And when the heat reached the streets, it didn't just melt engines, it dismantled communities. The dealership death spiral. Dealers closed, fans fled. Evo's ghost haunts the showroom floor. As the twin cam's failures piled up, so did the consequences, not just in engines, but in communities. Harley dealerships, once sacred gathering spots for local riders, began to feel the squeeze. Customers who had trusted the brand with their wallets and their weekends returned angry, disappointed, and in some cases, outright hostile. Service departments were overwhelmed with warranty claims. Parts back orders dragged for weeks. And in the eyes of many riders, the dealership, once a hub of camaraderie, became a place of corporate denial. The result was devastating. Between 2010 and 2024, dozens of small-town dealerships shut their doors permanently. These closures were more than economic statistics. They were cultural funerals. Bike nights disappeared. Weekend rides stopped organizing. Entire chapters of Harley owners group clubs collapsed. Dealers who had carried the brand through the AMF years now watched it collapse under the weight of poor decisions and faulty engineering. Meanwhile, the Evo-era bikes, long mocked for their age, started to rise again in popularity. Riders whispered about their simplicity, their soul, their dependability when treated right. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was backlash. The Evo had become a symbol of what Harley had been, and the twin cam a reminder of what it lost. And just as the culture began to fracture, the fallout would spread far beyond the showroom floor. The financial faceplant. Harley isn't just losing riders, it's losing credibility. By 2024, Harley-Davidson was facing more than just mechanical issues. The company's stock price had fallen over 30% in less than 2 years. Annual reports, once padded with healthy margins, were now flooded with declining sales, rising warranty claims, and dealership losses. Executives who once bragged about the brand's unmatched loyalty were suddenly silent during investor calls. Sales of new models, especially those powered by the later-stage twin-cam and Milwaukee 8 engines, were down nearly 40% from their peak. For a brand built on emotion, the financials told a cold story. The emotional connection was gone. Institutional investors noticed. Funds that had quietly held Harley stock for decades began to reduce their positions. Credit analysts flagged the company's long-term viability due to poor product performance and aging demographics. Even retail investors, once fiercely loyal to the brand as both consumers and shareholders, were pulling out. The mood shifted from optimism to containment. Leadership began issuing vague promises about a coming EV revolution, new designs, and younger customers. But few believed them. Not after so many cycles of silence, spin, and underwhelming execution. Harley wasn't just failing on the road, it was failing in the boardroom. Follow the numbers long enough, and they'll lead you straight to the real enemy Harley couldn't outrun: the rise of the rebel rebuilders. Blacksmiths turned Frankensteins, how indie builders salvaged Harley's soul. In garages, sheds, and small-town shops, a resistance formed. Independent builders and old-school mechanics began rewriting Harley's legacy one wrench turn at a time. The Evo engine, once flawed but beloved, became their platform of choice. While the corporation moved on to complex, over-regulated machines, these riders went backwards and forward at the same time. They didn't just restore Evo-powered bikes, they improved them. Aftermarket parts makers began selling upgraded cams, reinforced crankcases, and custom heads that outperformed Harley's factory specs. The internet helped spread the gospel. Evo could live again. Better, stronger, simpler. These weren't hobbyists tinkering for fun. They were working-class craftsmen, some with decades of experience, who believed Harley's soul had been stolen by suits and spreadsheets. Their builds weren't just reliable, they were beautiful. Stripped down, function-first machines that reminded riders what made Harley great to begin with. And their message was clear: if the company won't protect the legacy, the people will. This movement wasn't small. Across the country, Evo builds began to appear at shows, rallies, and Instagram feeds. What began as rebellion turned into a revival. Even as the rebels rebuilt Harley's soul at home, the world stage was preparing its own reckoning. The global collapse trigger. Tariffs, closures, and conspiracy. Harley's global gamble backfires. Harley's international missteps weren't just costly, they were catastrophic. EU tariffs hit hard, overseas plants alienated loyalists, and once proud exports became symbols of corporate betrayal. What began as a business strategy spiraled into a global credibility crisis. The damage? It crossed borders Harley never thought it would. While domestic struggles mounted, Harley's international position became even more precarious. In 2021, the European Union threatened massive retaliatory tariffs, more than 50% on American-made motorcycles. Harley, already struggling to grow in international markets, faced a no-win scenario: pay the tariffs or pull out. In a desperate move, Harley shifted some production overseas, triggering backlash at home. Critics accused the company of abandoning American labor. Politicians who once posed with bikes on campaign stops now issued condemnations. The brand that once symbolized American industry was caught in a geopolitical trap of its own making. Then came the factory closures. In 2022 and 2023, Harley shut down several U.S. facilities, citing operational efficiency. But insiders knew better. The real driver was falling demand, mounting warranty costs, and evaporating dealer profits. International dealers also began to struggle, with some reporting parts shortages and long shipping delays. Europe cooled, Asia plateaued, and Harley's global dreams began to fade. The Evo era, once mocked as antiquated, was now envied for its clarity and simplicity. What had started as an engine crisis had grown into a worldwide credibility collapse, and the storm hadn't even peaked yet. The wolves move in. Other brands are circling, smelling the blood in the water. Other motorcycle giants didn't wait for Harley to collapse, they pounced. Brands like Kawasaki and Triumph began flooding the cruiser market with bikes that were cheaper, more reliable, and modern. Harley's identity crisis became their competitive advantage, slicing deep into American territory. Harley-Davidson's stumble didn't happen in a vacuum. As the company lost riders, market share, and trust, its rivals moved in. Kawasaki began expanding its cruiser lineup, blending traditional styling with reliable modern engineering. Honda pushed the Rebel series harder than ever, winning over younger riders with affordable prices and low-maintenance design. Triumph, with its blend of heritage and performance, started converting former Harley owners who felt abandoned by the motor company. What used to be Harley's advantage, brand loyalty and American spirit, was now being mimicked, and in some cases improved upon. These companies didn't just sell motorcycles, they sold freedom without the frustration. Their bikes started every time, they didn't overheat, they didn't require a second mortgage to maintain. Riders began to whisper in forums, then shout at dealerships. Why buy nostalgia when you could buy something that worked? By 2024, non-Harley cruisers had grown their U.S. market share by more than 20%. In a space Harley once ruled uncontested, it now looked like the underdog. Worse, many of the new riders entering the culture had never even ridden a Harley and had no plans to start. While rivals took market share, Harley's own workers were preparing to take something back. The unions fire back. Politicians smell betrayal. Trade unions roar in response. Harley's move to shutter American factories and offshore key production lines lit a fuse in the labor world. Workers who had spent decades on assembly lines, machining parts, and testing engines were laid off with little warning. Union reps who had once partnered with Harley in good faith now called emergency meetings. In cities like York, Pennsylvania, and Kansas City, Missouri, plant closures became election year ammunition. Politicians on both sides of the aisle began questioning Harley's patriotism, branding the company a corporate sellout that profited from American culture while abandoning American labor. The unions didn't stop at rhetoric. Protests erupted outside shuttered plants, with former employees holding signs that read, "Built here, left behind." Petitions flooded congressional offices demanding a reevaluation of Harley's federal tax incentives and trade privileges. Labor leaders invoked Harley as a cautionary tale of what happens when manufacturing becomes a branding exercise instead of a commitment. The motor company, once wrapped in the American flag, now found itself accused of betrayal by the very people who kept its soul alive. The backlash wasn't just emotional, it was systemic. The consumer revolt. Consumer trust is a crash test, and Harley failed it. Harley didn't just lose riders, it drove them away. By 2025, thousands of longtime owners were offloading their bikes, not for upgrades but for exits. The used market flooded with Harley listings. Online forums turned hostile. Review videos that once gushed over Harley design began documenting breakdowns, cost overruns, and horror stories from the service department. And the most damning critique? Riders weren't angry anymore. They were indifferent. Worse yet, younger buyers, already skeptical of Harley's marketing, began organizing around alternatives. They praised Japanese reliability, European styling, and the simplicity of electric options. To them, Harley represented something bloated and broken, a brand too caught in its own mythology to actually deliver. Even the few new models that did innovate, like the live-wire electric bike, were priced far outside the average rider's reach, alienating the very audience Harley needed most. Trust, once lost, rarely returns. And for Harley, every empty showroom, every abandoned dealer, and every bitter online review was a fresh layer of reputation rot. And once the riders walked away, all that remained was a brand staring into its own reflection. If you're still here, it means you care about bikes, truth, and what comes next. So hit subscribe, because this is just one chapter in a much bigger story. From industry lies to corporate takedowns, we're digging into it all. The brand that burned itself. This isn't just about an engine, it's about a dream betrayed. The Harley-Davidson story was never just mechanical, it was emotional. It was cultural. For over 100 years, Harley stood as a symbol of rebellion, identity, and the open road. But by the middle of the 2020s, that symbol had fractured. The decline of the Evolution engine, the disaster of the twin cam, the collapse of dealerships, the betrayal of workers, and the revolt of riders all pointed to the same truth. Harley didn't just fail to adapt, it misunderstood what people truly wanted. Not gadgets, not compliance, not expensive nostalgia. What they wanted was connection. To the machine, to the community, and to themselves. Instead, Harley became the warning sign for legacy brands that lose their way. It showed how chasing quarterly profits, dodging responsibility, and surrendering to bureaucracy can kill even the most powerful name in American business. The soul of Harley wasn't in its logo or its factory. It was in the people who believed it meant something more. And once that belief was broken, all the torque in the world couldn't bring it back. There's still a path forward: reinvention, honesty, and humility. But if Harley chooses the easy road again, it won't just lose sales, it will lose history. Forever. Harley's story isn't over, but the illusion is. If this opened your eyes, don't just walk away. Subscribe now, because what's coming next digs even deeper into the machines, the myths, and the power plays shaping our roads. Share this with every rider you know. Comment with your experience. This isn't just history, it's happening now. And the only way to stay ahead of it is to ride with us. You in? Then gear up. Let's go.